She may be the youngest member of the House, but Democrats are turning to Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to learn how to master social media. On Thursday, the 29-year-old said she held a training session for her colleagues, but she's not the only politician with a knack for social media. Former Congressman Beto O'Rourke posted this from his dental chair.
So I'm here at the dentist, and we're going to continue our series on the people of the border.
He was speaking to his dental hygienist from a Texas border town about immigration. The two Democrats have raked up the followers, but neither compare to the president's numbers, leading us to ask, how is social media impacting the future of politics? I'm joined now by CNET senior producer Dan Patterson and Christina Capatitis. She is the director of social media and trending content for CBS News. Dan and Christina, welcome to both of you. Thanks so much for being here. You know, I have to begin by saying I'm not surprised that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is sort of leading the charge in terms of social media know-how. Literally, her campaign got started with a viral video. No one knew who she was until that video went viral. Why is she so adept? Is this a generational thing?
I really don't think it's generational. I think it's about authenticity, and she is really pulling back the curtain on being a normal person. We've seen her cooking Instapot mac and cheese. We've seen her, road tripping to Congress, and, it wasn't always glamorous. It's just, I think politicians used to think that they had to be manicured in their public image, and it is no longer the way.
But it does seem that you need to have a certain talent for that authenticity. If you try to fake it, it doesn't work very well. Isn't that right?
Right. It has landed flat in the past. I think we've seen that with when Hillary Clinton had in her profile pantsuit aficionado, when Jeb Bush tried to sell a guac bowl as campaign merchandise. It really has to be authentic.
Right.
People can sniff it out if it's not.
So, Dan, do we mistake being genuine for being transparent when it comes to our politicians on social media?
Well, transparency is a term that can be misappropriated or even just misused without saying the word. We look at our president. He has tweeted more things than any president tweeted prior. So you could say, well, he's fairly transparent, at least with some things on social media. But the authenticity, he is still a billionaire in that office trying to appeal to a working class base. So there is a significant difference between transparency and authenticity. And I think to what Christina is saying, the authentic candidates, those who are able to say, hey, I really am just like you, are those that are cutting through the noise.
Right. Well, what I think he does understand, though, the president, is that in 2019, it is kind of essential to utilize social media well.
Yes.
We saw it with Obama and Facebook in 2008, in 2016 with Trump and Twitter. It's just becoming essential.
So since this is the new normal, this question is for both of you. What are the tangible impacts of social media becoming the main platform through which our, government leaders and those vying for office transmit their messages?
I think it's become the new bully pulpit. So if you want to shift discourse in either to the left or to the right of the mainstream in Congress, you can do that there. So Ocasio-Cortez is far left of her colleagues in the Democratic Party, but because of how well she's communicated on Instagram and Twitter, it's really not the far left to the voters anymore. She's shifted it left in the same way that I think President Trump has shifted it right.
Right.
Yeah.
Dan, would you agree?
Yeah, one thing that we have noticed and that is now abundantly clear after many iterations of social media is that the social web is the new broadcast. And look, it is not a static thing. The internet, as it was in 2006, 7, and 8, when Twitter and Facebook were in their primordial stages, is certainly not the social web of today, where Instagram and other very fast-moving social platforms leverage the cloud and other brand-new technologies to be effective. So if there's one thing that is very clear, it's that the transmitter is now online. It's not in the air.
What I'm so curious about, though, is that we know that there have been so many instances of bots and Russian influence and all kinds of things in social media. So when you talk about her message being normalized, maybe a little bit more radical, and it's being brought to the center, hasn't there also been the opposite occurring, the radicalization of social media by some of these players, these foreign players that are trying to push the needle in one direction or another?
Oh, Tanya, we could spend all day talking about the radicalization of the consumers of social media. And we certainly see when we look at silos, there is a radicalization on the left and the right. And we know that social media is incredibly influential. Facebook wouldn't be a multi-billion-dollar company if it wasn't, and Russians wouldn't spend a lot of time trying to influence our elections if the social web wasn't influential. But that might be kind of looking at the weird and sad implications of the social web.
There are some weird and sad implications for sure. But Dan, these social media companies themselves help politicians get their message out, don't they? In what ways? They train them? What else do they do?
Well, in 2008, we saw Facebook work with both campaigns, and there is this distinction that we need to make between the affinity of many of the employees of these companies and the actual policies of the companies. And for a long time, the companies, Facebook, Twitter, Google, and other social companies have had a fairly neutral policy where we will work equally with both parties. But we also know that they've embedded their employees within campaigns for quite a while. And again, as technology iterates, so too do these platforms and their policies as well.
It sounds a little bit like there's, the Oz behind the curtain there. I mean, shouldn't everybody just be a little bit more transparent about all of this, Christina?
Yeah, I think that there is a benefit, though, to taking the mediator out of the equation and going straight to the people. I think that we see that, there is also a benefit to them implementing best practices on social media.
Of course.
So Ocasio-Cortez, as you mentioned, held a Twitter lesson for her Democratic colleagues today, which was a really kind of funny, really unique thing. And she held it with her colleague, Jim Himes, which is an interesting choice because he really only has like 78,000 followers on Twitter. But what you do see when you look at his profile is that he is implementing those authenticity best practices into his profile. So
right.
I think it says reader, runner, swimmer, apiarist, which is a fancy word for beekeeper, and I make maple syrup. So that is really funny.
You've got to come up with a cute little, tagline nowadays.
Exactly.
So in terms of these platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, do politicians show an affinity for one over the other?
I think that Twitter is still a big place for them. I think you see politicians like Bernie and Elizabeth Warren that still have 9 million followers and things like that. But the new frontier is Instagram and these Instagram lives that are really pulling back the curtain on normal life.
All right, we'll continue to watch them. Christina and Dan, thanks to both of you.
Thanks.